Alright, good morning everyone. I just want to go through today's session, and what we're looking at in particular is we are looking at some basic rules of algebra and how that's going to work. I'm also going to go through some examples of how it can be used. So firstly we're going to do some conventions and have a look at the correct way to be writing, and then after that we'll do some examples. So to start with, what's an expression? What's an equation? You probably hear me use these terms a lot. They do mean different things. An expression is a mathematical sentence that contains operations, which are plus, minus, times, divide, and numbers, which are numbers, and it can also contain variables, which are letters. All right. So, for example, 2y plus 7 is an expression. An equation is when a mathematical sentence has two expressions that are equal. Okay, so usually it's in the form of something like 2y plus 7 equals 5, or something like that. In this case, 2y plus 7 equals y plus 14. Now, the essential difference between the two is an expression has no equal sign, an equation does have an equal sign. Okay, so an expression, it does not have an equal sign. That's the key. And it makes sense when you think about it, because equation kind of sounds a bit like equal, right? So that's how I remember anyway. All right. Let's talk about a couple definitions for what these words mean, and I think you can write down these definitions in your book somewhere so you can remember them. So firstly, a constant, right? A constant is a number that is not multiplied by a variable. Okay, so it's a number that is not multiplied by a variable, just on its own. So for example, it might be like a, at the end you might see like a plus 5. It's like that, for example. A coefficient is a number that is multiplied by a variable, so you might have like 6y, right, which is 6 times y. A term, okay? A term is anything that is separated by a plus or a minus. So it might be 6y minus 5, right? These are two separate terms because there is a plus and a minus separating them. Multiplication and divide do not count. And lastly, what is a variable? A variable is a letter, right? And it's a placeholder, and it essentially says we don't know what this number is just yet, so we've put this letter in just in case. Okay, so there's a couple of little rules that you should be thinking of, right? First one is when you're writing a multiplication sign with a coefficient and a letter together, you should just leave out that multiplication sign. Okay, it's good practice too. Secondly, you want to write your pronumerals in alphabetical order, or your variables in alphabetical order. So if I had something like 6 B C A, I apologize because my B's look a lot like 6's, right? I should actually rewrite that as 6 A B C. Right? You want to get into the habit of writing them in alphabetical order. It doesn't change the value at all, so don't stress about that. Alright, pronumerals should be in front of the numbers. So if I had like B7, right, B times 7, I should write that as 7B, right? Which makes sense when you think about it. Does it make more sense to say I went to the supermarket and bought bananas times 7? Or does it make more sense to say I went to the supermarket and I bought 7 bananas? I mean, technically they're both right, but one of them makes a bit more sense. Constants should go at the end. So if you have like, I don't know, 6a plus 5 minus 2b, right? The constant in this case being that plus 5, you just want to scoot that down to the end. So what did I say? It was 6a. I have to move that whole minus 2b across. and have a +5 on the end. Alright? And then use the fraction bar instead of the division symbol. So if I have 7 divided by a, that's supposed to be a division symbol, 7 divided by a, it should be written like this, generally speaking. Okay? Alright, let's have a couple of practice goes. Take a second to write down these rules, and let's see if you can figure out the right way to write these. Alright, so pause this if you need more time. Okay. 5 times q. Well, hopefully you figured out that you need to get rid of the multiplication symbol and make it 5q. What about b times 7? Okay. You need to take the multiplication sign out and make sure the number goes first. So 7b. What about b times a? You take the multiplication symbol out and you put the pronumerals or the variables in alphabetical order. Z times a times 4. I'll give you a second. Right? So you take out the multiplication signs, you put them in alphabetical order, and you put the number at the front. So 4az. 5 times 6, so 6 plus 5 times t. Let's see if anybody can figure this one out. Okay. You take out the multiplication sign and you make sure the constant goes at the end. So instead of being 6 plus 5t, it's 5t plus 6. Look at this one. W times 3 plus 9 times y. Well, you should have had 3w plus 9y. Take the multiplication signs out and you make sure that 3 goes in front of that w. What about a divided by 2? Alright, well hopefully you did the fraction version, a over 2. Alright, instead of that division sign. B times a divided by 6. Well, hopefully you took out that multiplication sign and used a fraction bar instead of a division sign. And the reason that this sort of syntax is important is because from this question, it's not immediately obvious whether it's b times a divided by 6 or whether it's b times a divided by 6. It'll work out the same in the end, but it's not clear which way it should be written. So in this case, it's a lot more clear that it's a times b divided by 6. Alright, that's everything for that. We'll get rid of them. Looking at, now we have some questions. What did I do with them? Let's open in here. Okay. Alright. So a couple of algebra word problems here. The first couple ones I assume you'll be able to do on your own. It's the ones that actually use algebra that I wanted to show you. So this first question here, Bob is X years old. What is Bill's age if? So it's question 2, right? So I'm going to write this down in a second. So if Bob is X years old, what is Bill's age if? Alright, let me flick over to this camera here. Right? And the question it's asking is, what is Bill's age if Bill is 5 years older than Bob? So Bob is some unknown number of years, so we're going to write X. Bill's age is, if he's 5 years older than Bob, he is Bob's age, which is X. plus 5. Right? Twice as old as Bob. Alright? If he's twice as old as Bob, then Bill is 2 times Bob's age. But as you remember from our conventions that we just did, we get rid of this multiplication sign, which means that Bill is 2 times Bob's age, which is just 2x. Twice as old as Bob, and then add 3 years. Okay. Again, Bill is 2 times Bob's age plus 3 years. I get rid of that plus sign again. Plus sign, so multiplication sign. Plus 3 years. Right? And that's how this algebra is working basically. I'll see if there's any other. I'm assuming that most of them are pretty similar to give a go. I'll just do this days of the week one, this last question, question 5. Alright. I'll start at question 3. How many days are in X weeks plus Y days? Alright. I'm assuming you'll be able to figure it out, the rest of them out, if I do this one. This is in question 3. So I want to know if it's X weeks and Y days. How do I figure out how many days of the week have passed? Right? Well, how many days are in a week? 7. So it's 7 times however many weeks there are plus how many days there are. In which case the equation becomes 7x, getting rid of that multiplication sign, plus y. Alright? So it's all about replacing values and trying to think problems through. Hopefully this helps. Enjoy the rest of your day.